Happy Monday. I'm here, Home HQ. Todd is there in the studio, and we are coming to you live today with a bit of a makeshift show. Decided to give Aaron a personal day. Figured, since he does twice as much work as either one of us does for half the notoriety, he can have one of those every now and then. So I want to thank Stephen Smith and everybody down in Dallas today. It takes like 4 people to fill in for Aaron. So thank you guys for doing that at the last minute for us so that we can be here live and on demand today on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Of course, a short week this week with the Thanksgiving holiday. So we're going to cover as much ground as we possibly can. But first, we need to let you know that we're brought to you by our friends over at First Cup Coffee Company. They've got a flavor for every single freedom-loving American in this audience. But don't just get it because they share your values of faith, family, and freedom. Get it because they make a hella cup of coffee. That's the most important thing. Remember, excellence is one of our values, right? The product's got to be excellent. Then we support your values because that's the first value of ours that you've got to match. And they do that. They put the roast on date right there in every bag so you know it's shipped to you within days of being roasted. Get a discount right now when you go to firstcup.com and use the promo code Deace. Again, that's firstcup.com, promo code Deace for the discount. And speaking of discounts, of course, we are on the cusp of the biggest shopping weekend of the year in America, and the American economy needs this one to be a big one. All right. So right now for Black Friday, we are giving you $40 off, double the discount we had been offering. $40 off a subscription to Blaze TV. If you get it now, then you're with us all the way through next year's crucial midterms. You won't miss anything that any of us here, Allie, Glenn, any of us do here on the network, exclusively for subscribers. You will miss none of it. And join us in the fight as well. It's the perfect Christmas gift, and now it's $40 off this weekend only for Black Friday with the code BlackFriday40. That's code BlackFriday40 at blazetv.com/Deace, BlackFriday40. I think that now works out to 4 cents a day. Or no, I'm sorry, 13 cents a day and $4 a month, I think is what it works out to now. Right, if you double that discount from before, if my math is right, but it may not be. I went to government school. Right, Black Friday 40 right now at blazetv.com/Deace. All right, no montage today with no Aaron. Next hour, we are going to continue these long-form discussions, dialogues that we started a few weeks ago on the show, kind of on the state of the right. And our colleague Jason Whitlock's going to join us now next hour. And you'll notice we're kind of zigging and zagging here. So we had Oron McIntyre, our colleague here at the Blaze, 2 weeks ago. And he's typically considered on the more dissident or woke right, another term, again, a term that we're not really sure what it means, but he's usually put into that label. Josh Hammer would be more your traditional Judeo-Christian conservative. He was with us last hour. Whitlock would again be in more of your more of your dissident woke conservative label. We'll find out what he thinks even about these labels when he joins us for the full hour coming up next hour on the show. But as I welcome in Todders, and he is here back there in the home studio. The reason why we're not both there is we had to do this digitally today, which means we could not be in the same place to dial in. So I'm here in the basement. And then Todd, you are there in our posh studios. You have a good weekend, brother. Good to see you.
I had a very good weekend. Absolutely. Both girls are home. Everybody, the whole Erzin clan under one roof. That's a rare thing.
No, that's good to hear. And you guys are gearing up for Thanksgiving. We are doing that over here too. Everybody planning on coming to the house for the Thanksgiving weekend. People ask me, in our business, you run into friends and stuff that you just get busy because you're spread out all over the country. And sometimes, months go by and you don't have a chance to, sometimes years, to check in with somebody. And I had Chris Hassel over at CBS Sports, who is natively from Des Moines. Him and I came right out of the same market to go on to do this in national media, him in sports and me in news and politics. And we were DMing over the weekend, and he asked me, hey, how are things going, man? It's been several years. I'm like, you know what? Brother, I got 3 adult children, and so far none of them hate me, so I'm calling that a dub. I mean, that's the stuff you start looking at, Todd, when you get to be our age, is does everybody want to get back together again, and can they at least pretend not to hate each other? If that's the baseline of success here, you're a pretty happy man at our age, my friend.
My cup is runneth over.
Indeed. All right. So, over the weekend, a massive story broke. And I wanted to make sure that we let off the show today discussing this, my friend, because It's the kind of story that a lot of Americans in this audience are not going to hear about, because only about 25% of X accounts are from the United States and actively used. So most of this audience is not on X or Twitter, as it used to be known. But as I've always said whenever this topic has come up on the program, it doesn't matter if you're on it or not, because it's the city gate of the world now. It is the place where more news narratives and opinions and stories that will eventually filter down to you in the platforms you do more frequently use. The mouth of the river is X. That's where these things originate. And so even if you're not a participant, and might be best for many of your mental healths if you're not, for being honest, even if you're not a participant in the dialogue on X, if you're listening to us or watching us right now, you're in the arena of ideas, and therefore you are impacted by what happens on X every single day, whether you are active on X or not. And over the weekend, Todd, a subtle but extremely significant feature was added to X. And there's a term we used a lot during COVID, and it's come up a few times since, but it was part of the daily parlance during COVID. That term is PSYOP. And what's a PSYOP? It is the mass leveraging of a particular message in a way that is designed to pressure you to act in accordance with that message, when, if given the time to rationally consider that message's claims, you otherwise may not do so. And if you go back to COVID, we often described it as like the Thanos snap, right? Because during COVID, we were just a year off of the Marvel movies with Thanos, so everybody understood that reference. And there just seemed to be days like all of a sudden somebody snapped a finger, and hey, I don't want to kill grandma, so let's do lockdowns. Hey, somebody snapped a finger, and I've got to wear a mask, not for me but for other people. Well, what's the scientific evidence? Well, you don't want to kill grandma, do you? That's not evidence. That's a polemic. Well, I just don't, I don't want to kill grandma. I can't believe you do. Then there's a snap. Oh, we went from a lot of people saying, I'll never take a Trump vaccine, to, I will stop you from participating in society if you don't. And we might even take your kids. Snap, safe and effective. Snap, safe and effective. Well, where's the data? Well, they told us it was. Well, who told you? Well, Pfizer. Like that great bit from the comedian Ryan Long, where he went out on the street wearing a Pfizer t-shirt, talking to a bunch of people. You remember this, Todd? Talking to a bunch of people how corporations are terrible and need to be controlled by government. Except Pfizer, everything they do is right? And how many people on the street agreed with him on this? I mean, we just saw this over and over and over again. Those are psyops. And of course, you have to make a decision right now. You're like, the media is like the William H. Macy character in Fargo. You have to buy the undercoating now. You don't have time to, we can't show you any data. You don't have time. Remember what happened when Fauci was asked, well, why can't we get a double blind study on whether masks, we don't have time. We're all going to die right now. We don't have time. No time for science. Well, you're telling us to follow the science. We don't have time for. Follow the science. We don't have time. That's a psyop. I had my year-end board meeting for my company that controls and runs all of the content that I produce for you every year, whether that's the stuff that the Blaze purchases from me as a vendor, whether that's the books I publish, whether that's a movie I produced once. And one of the conversations we had is I said to my board, the last month and a half, the first month and a half after Charlie's death, after his murder, despite the tragedy and the amount of just open sobbing I did in the days in the aftermath of that. And, we did a song at church on Sunday we haven't sang since the Sunday after Charlie's murder. And I just broke down all over again just this past Sunday, months later. But yet, despite that tragedy, that was the most unified I felt like we had ever been. That was the most on message I felt like we had ever been. And then I told my board the month and a half since that month and a half might be the worst this job has ever been. The most dreadful, nihilistic, divided this job has ever been. And I mean, I'm just seeing people turn on each other all over the place. And it's all over the Jews, anti-Semitism, Israel, etc. Well, over the weekend, Elon Musk, the man that we would not have won this last election without, his purchase of X was significant. Not to mention his support of Trump during the campaign. But even if he had not done that, just the purchase of X alone, to free up the largest hub of information and opinion distribution on planet Earth, would have been an immeasurable contribution all by itself, even before the sweat equity he put into it. And he's the reason, during the election last year, I was drawing an analogy. He's the Gutenberg to Trump's Luther. And if you look at Trump and Luther's personas, they're very similar, in fact. And why did Luther escape? Condemnation of Todd's ancestors, that previous attempts didn't work. He had Gutenberg. He had the ability to get a message out to the masses via the printing press. And that's what Trump had. That's why they didn't get him this time like they did in 2020. And that's why they had to try to kill him. Because he could get his message out again. His base could be energized again. And over the weekend, Musk took this to the next level. They added a country of origin feature to every account. And boy, howdy. What came next? Todd, it's one of those things we should have probably known in the back of our minds and predicted the entire time. But we kind of got caught up in it too. We had no idea that this was truly ever going to really happen. And so it looked like, particularly on the heels of the Fuentes Tucker interview, we were left with, we're going to have to clean up some kind of generational level of mess here when it comes to anti-Semitism and the like. But there's just one problem. Almost all of it was a psyop. Almost all of it was. Just like almost all of COVID was. Now, here's the thing. Was there a real COVID-19 virus? Yes. Just like, do we have a real Nick Fuentes, Groyper, anti-Semitism problem on the right? Yes, we do. And that's why the PSYOP works. Because of those two things, if there were no virus, if people were not really getting sick, people were not really going to the hospital unable to breathe, there would not be a kernel enough of truth in order for the PSYOP to work. If there really wasn't, whether you want to call him an actual Nazi professional troll, whoever you happen to think Fuentes and his Groyper cult represents, who you think he is, whatever. If it didn't really exist, the PSYOP wouldn't work. So you take something, a basic problematic element, and then you nefariously blow this thing massively up. One of the things we looked at as a after credit scene for my movie Nefarious is a scene where you see a massive data center out in the middle of nowhere, and you see a blacklist of prominent conservative names and a promotion of prominent left-wing spirit of the age causes, and just a bunch of foreigners working at the. I'm not kidding. I mean, I conceptually outlined this scene myself, and a bunch of foreign elements working at the desks of said data centers, just promoting this list. And you keep pulling back, and it's row after row after row of chairs and desks in this data center. You pull back, and you see Nefarious overseeing all of it from a corner office on high. Man, that whole movie we made is prophetic. The scene we didn't shoot might have been among the most prophetic, because that's pretty much what's been happening here. Bangladesh, India, Qatar. United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. Over and over and over again. Accounts claiming to be Palestinian stop the starvation and the genocide. Not even in Palestine. Accounts claiming to be America first. Not in America. Not even in this hemisphere. Accounts claiming to be Groypers. Prominent groypers, almost none of them from the United States. Todd, stop me if I'm making any of this up.
You are not.
I mean, this was a sight to behold, and this unraveling is still happening. Now, some people are trying to claim, well, I'm using a VPN. Okay, well, I mean, why do you have to use, if you're in the United States, why do you have to use a VPN to post on X? That puts you in a different country of origin. Why do you need to do that? I'm sure that's a few people, maybe. Maybe a few people have been mislabeled, but not this many. This has been chronic. And it begs the question, how much of this division has been real this entire time? It begs a couple of other questions. Like, again, the virus was real. The PSYOP is what they wanted us to do in response to it, to wear masks, to take a poisonous jab, when all the information out there largely said that those solutions were frauds, and most of the people pushing that information turned out to be frauds themselves. Again, there is a guy named Nick Fuentes, professional troll, actual wannabe Hitler, whatever you think he is. There really are too many young men caught in his nexus that we have to deal with. But the existential levels of this are nowhere near what is billed. And much of it's been a foreign PSYOP from the beginning. Now, if we're going to have a central hub of information like this kind of transparency that Elon has embarked upon, they're going to have to up the ante now even more moving forward, I think. And I know, Todd, you'll have something to say about that here in a minute when I throw it to you. Because I think your solution's probably going to be, one way to just get rid of this altogether and not worry about it is just not have any anonymity on X at all.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute too. But you have to understand that if you're wondering why maybe some of your favorite righty influencers with blue check marks either went silent in the face of this anti-Semitism of the last couple of months and or appeared to at least be entertaining some of these groyper narratives, the answer is look at your engagement if you do, and look at your engagement if you don't. Look at your engagement if you play ball with these foreign elements in this PSYOP, and then look at your engagement if you don't. There's a marked difference. And then if I'm an advertiser, frankly, I have to start asking myself when I see this news, like let's say that I'm an advertiser that's been putting up with Candace Owens and whatever her act currently is, her scam of the last few weeks. I see these huge engagement numbers. I got to start asking myself, are these real? How much of it is real? Am I getting the response from this that justifies tolerating having my product attached to this? This is among the most significant stories I think that has happened this year. Because it goes right to the heart of the matter, Don Henley. And to quote Don Henley again, of our own dirty laundry. And how much of this so-called civil war on the right now, in retrospect, never really was a thing. I mean, it was just William Randolph Hearst manipulating the op-ed pages of the newspapers he controlled. But this time we're doing it in Arabic, or in India, or Bangladesh. So let me stop there. And Todd, let me bring you into the conversation now. And one thing I want to address in a minute, this is an incredible opportunity for an off-ramp for a lot of people. And I'm going to suggest that they take it here in a moment. But Todd, first, I want to bring you into this and your thoughts both on how you watched this transpire over the weekend and the way I just kind of laid it out and responded myself.
Well, it's funny. It turns out that that scene in Superman with the monkeys, like
the monkeys
posting.
poop posting. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
True, not even fiction. But I can't. I mean, Steve brought up all of the tentacles that grown-ups should be ultimately dealing with. I just don't have a level of confidence. That's the next layer is how much do people really care? Because there are There are solutions to this. But this isn't just an X thing. The water social media folks swim in is really prone to anonymity on every front. This is just an X question we're talking about. But when we look at, you mentioned Charlie, when we look at what we have to start talking about Reddit and everything that goes on there. And if we really want to deal with these things in a world that Steve is regularly talking about Daniel with, Steve just brought it up. Daniel doubles down every time. The conservative case for economic renewal is apparently more social media, more data farms, more things like that. We keep saying this is a problem, and then we keep doing the things that double and triple down on the problem. I mean, yesterday I brought this up basically as an experiment that everybody instantly races to prove my point. I said, not only should we be getting rid of foreign accounts, we should be getting anon accounts. And instantly, the racing to say, well, I'm just like the founding fathers.
You mean John Hancock, who signed his name so large that even a going blind King George III could see it? You mean like that?
Yes, we've created a dynamic where we are addicted to the way we engage with social media, and we justify our being able to be very loud with very little accountability. And if you're telling me that those kind of people are, yes, also at the school board meeting, I just don't believe you. I just don't. And so, Steve, this is just the tip of the iceberg, this foreign influence on it. Because as you said, while X is more real life than you led earlier on, and I think you were right to acknowledge that, it's the number of people who are engaged in it relative to other social media and why they do it and why they like getting away with it, because it's a totally different life. It's an imaginary life. They don't want it to be real.
So,
they
Todd,
don't want it to be accountable.
Pardon me, Todd, you seem skeptical that a woman claiming to be a trad wife on a farm, homesteading everything and knitting her own clothes in between sips of raw milk with 14 kids, you seem to be skeptical that she has time to post 47 times a day on X in between all of those various duties. Are you skeptical of that, Todd?
I have questions.
You have questions. Yeah.
So by all means, let's commence with really addressing this and making the world a better place. But I'm reliably told on other fronts that there's just too much money. And so we have to go down this road, and that's just how it has to be. I'm just never that guy. I'm tired of money absolutely robbing us of our soul.
Well, I think Musk is more in line with you. I mean, no one on earth has more money than he does. No one on earth has ever had more money than he has. And he's the one that both bought this app in order to make it a free exchange of ideas, and then put this feature in order to expose this. By the way, the three largest foreign investors into X, according to X's own AI, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates, I think, is the third.
So do you have any idea if the timing of Musk doing this is specifically because of the crap storm of the last 2 months?
I wonder if that's the case. You know, you and I were joking. I think I even maybe mentioned it on the air. I mean, one of the original progenitors of Zionist conspiracy talk is Alex Jones. And I mean, he was on a show, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Complaining about all the Jew hate in his feed and that Musk has to do something about it. So, you know, I think when you've gotten to the point of blaming the Zionist cabal, that even Alex Jones is like, come on, man. Okay. Then maybe that was the moment where Musk was like, we got to do something about this.
So good. But Elon, worldview is destiny. Then we might have questioned if, even though we don't share his worldview in many respects, why does his worldview keep beating our worldview to the punch on doing what is necessary? Isn't that getting frustrating? I thought our
very frustrating. It's very frustrating to see Elon Musk have often more principled stands for righteousness in the public space than many of the people in our pulpits, the men in our pulpits across the country. Yeah, it's noticeable and frustrating. I want to let's close this conversation with this, because next segment we're gonna switch to a topic that may have set the stage for next year's midterms. We'll see. Okay, but there's been, I can just tell you, because I've had these conversations privately, including with people many of you know. there has been a lot of consternation on our side. Crap, does that mean we have to take, these Fuentes people seriously now? We have to make that they're part of an objective part of the discourse. And there's, I think, we're seeing a rise in, let me put it this way. In fact, let me make it very direct. If you're in if you're one of those people, that self-appointed atheist sheriff of Nottingham, James Lindsay, has decided that he is the first bishop of Christian ethics as an atheist. He gets to decide what is and is not in the public space proper Christian civic conduct and conversation. If you're some of those people, if you're one of those people, and several of those people are good friends of mine, a couple of them work at our own network and are friends of mine. And I also think, there's other people maybe with aspirations for higher office that have been wondering, particularly without Charlie here, to be the dam to hold back reactionary retardation. Man, how many times have I thought about that meme, Todd? How many times have I thought about that meme? Every day. Every day.
Couple of times.
Every day since September 11th, basically, I've thought about that meme. And maybe you're thinking, what's the off-ramp? You have an off-ramp. My suggestion, strongly suggested, I should say. Take it. This is the perfect moment to sit there and say, you know what? We don't need to create our own Louis Farrakhan. Yep, the guy's got an audience. Great. So's Hustler Magazine. So's Vivid Video. So does OnlyFans. Doesn't mean they're part of the objective discourse. OnlyFans' audience dwarfs the Groypers. Doesn't mean we invite them to the table of ethical conversation. More is required than just the size of your audience. But if you're wondering, I don't know, man, how do we navigate this? This seems to be everywhere. It's not everywhere. The PSYOP is, this is your off-ramp. This is the moment. Hey, listen, I was very critical of Ben Shapiro during COVID at times. But when the studies did, give Ben credit for this, when the studies did start coming out that the jab didn't work, Todd, he did go on the record and correct himself.
He did.
This is that kind of a moment now. All right? You don't have to make a public statement. Don't. In fact, I would urge you not to do it. Just like Homer Simpson, just quietly move back into the bushes in that great meme. Just quietly step back. Walk away. This is the off ramp. A lot of people were very concerned post Tucker Fuentes interview that they were now going to get labeled Groypers. Anything to the right of Mike Pence, anything more disruptive than Mike Pence now was going to be Nick Fuentes and Groyperism, courtesy of that Tucker interview. And that was you were right to be concerned about this, but you now have received from above, or at least from Elon here on Earth, you have received an off-ramp. Everyone should be taking this off-ramp. This is largely a PSYOP. Yes, we had to reach our young men, but this is just largely a PSYOP.
This is your almost famous recommendation right here.
Yes.
They made you feel cool, didn't you?
Yes.
No,
yes.
they're really just losers.
Yes, they're really just losers. Yeah. Okay. Just move on and get out. Back away. Take the off-ramp. And that has huge potential. If some really smart people that I've passively aggressively just now referenced, that most people with more than a double-digit IQ in our audience that are at least somewhat observant can probably do the mental math and they know exactly who I'm talking to and talking about. All right? And some of them I have texted privately this morning. This is the off-ramp now. Take it. Take the off-ramp. Move on. We're going to move on. Was it a classic rope-a-dope or just dopey? We'll get into that next. Stay tuned.
The Steve Deace Show.
All right, back here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace with Todders, and if you or someone you care about is looking at getting a Christian college education, there's a free, easy-to-use resource that does the heavy lifting for you. It's called the Christian College Guide. You can find them at christiancollegeguide.com. It's an online directory of 250 Christian colleges and universities. That's a one-stop shop. It does all the basics you're looking for in any other kind of college or university, right? Acceptance rates, tuition cost, academic majors, etc. But if that's all you were looking for, you wouldn't be looking at a Christian college. What you want to do is make sure the Christian college you're looking at is actually Christian. And so that's where the Christian College Guide comes in. What about the spiritual life? What about campus policy, spiritual formation, things of that nature, discipleship? It'll get into all of that for you. And again, it's completely free. So if you or someone you know is considering college, go to christiancollegeguide.com. Go there. You can create a free user profile and get started today. That's christiancollegeguide.com. Again, christiancollegeguide.com. All right, Mr. Erzin. On Friday afternoon, the meeting, the much anticipated meeting in the Oval Office between Mayor-elect Mamdani in New York, the Islamunist, and President Trump took place. All right. Now, to me, you either view this meeting as a rope-a-dope, which is my position, and I will explain it, or dopey. And I don't know what your position actually is, so I'll find out here in a few minutes. I will tell you that everyone still posting hashtag DeSantis only that is still following me believed it was dopey. Okay. Now, here's the thing with Trump. All right. And I can't believe I have to say this many years into this, but apparently I do. If the schmaltzy aspect of the presentation is what you judge whether or not it's a rope-a-dope or dopey by, then you're probably going to judge a lot of what Trump says and does as dopey, right? The all caps, social media post at 3 a.m. and the quadruple exclamation points. But be careful. I'm not saying some of that at times isn't kind of cringy and dopey. I'm not. But if you get into the trap of thinking that's the primary way by which you're going to judge the president's actions, then you're going to essentially start believing that boink your mom to carnivore, whatever that guy's name is. I know more. I'm better at this than a guy who's a multi-billionaire and likely has won the presidency 3 times. You're not. You're not better at this than him. I can promise you you're not. You're not. You're not. I can promise you that. Right? So you have to look at the substance behind the schmaltz. The schmaltz is an acquired taste, and Todd, I'm going to admit, after about a decade, I still haven't fully acquired it yet. All right? I still haven't fully acquired it yet. All right. It's why I still don't watch like long form Trump rallies. The schmaltz aspect of it, not my bag. Okay. That's why I just look at the substance and the outcomes. And there's a reason why the guy's got billions of dollars in the bank. Most of us don't. And he probably won the U.S. presidency 3 times. To me, I thought this was a classic rope-a-dope. And yes, you could point out lines where Trump went too far with the schmaltz. You could point it out. All right. But I thought this was a classic rope-a-dope, the Muhammad Ali strategy. Essentially that's your opponent. And Sylvester Stallone emulated this in the Rocky movies. He borrowed it from Muhammad Ali. Kind of let your opponent kind of punch himself out. But he added kind of maybe unintentionally, I don't know, but he added kind of a biblical twist to it in my mind. Both the Old and the New Testament talks about treating your enemy with kindness, and it has the equivalent impact of dumping hot coals on their heads. That I don't know how many times any of you have had hot coals dumped on your heads. Not a pleasurable experience. Okay, and so essentially you end up burning and melting your enemy with flattery and kindness. I think that was clearly what Trump was attempting to do. And I think this clearly was an attempt to say, when much of next year is making Mamdani the face of the modern Democratic Party for the midterm elections. I tried, man. I mean, I brought him in. I even told him, we joked. We had some laughs. I even told him he could call me a fascist if he wanted to. Ha, 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 ha. I love New York. It's my native city. I've invested billions of my own dollars in New York. I wouldn't be the man I am today without New York City. I want it to be great. I want it to be America's greatest city. It kills me that I had to move my operations to Florida to escape New York. I'd love to come back. I'm going to be leaving office here soon. I'd love to spend the rest of my years, looking at the skyline that has my name all over it. But this guy's driving this city into the ground, man. Into the ground. I tried to butter him up. I even had people on my own side like Todd Erzin telling me it was completely dopey and paunchy at Red State and I went too far and shouldn't have been doing all this stuff. And I, equivocated what he said with mine. I mean, I was laying it on thick, trying to set it up for the young man to surprise us. Instead, it's an absolute bleep hole. And then if things go right, he just pivots the other way and says, well, why do you think I had the meeting with him? I thought there was a chance maybe he wasn't quite as radical as he claimed to be. And then you just you play that as an out card. And by then, hopefully, you've turned the economy around so you don't have to deflect the Democrats. You can run on your own record. Because if they don't do that, it really doesn't matter what the Democrats' record is. We're going to lose. All right. So, Todd, what are your thoughts? I thought it was a definite rope-a-dope, not dopey. But what do you think?
Well, I just don't see this in any way specifically about Mandami at all. This is just Donald Trump. This is the weather. Going all the way back, Steve, when Trump 1.0, when you were pulling your hair out because he was visiting with Kim Jong-un.
And that's how I had to learn these lessons because I watched and observed on my own. Yes.
He meets with everybody. He'll go in the middle of the press. He doesn't feel like, he doesn't feel that by and large he can lose most of these, if any, of these one-on-ones. He knows his persona when in a room with whether it's like, remember the Republican debates where we keep thinking sooner or later somebody's going to stand up for themselves. No, people kind of pucker when they're in the room. The world leaders want to be around him. He's just transfixing to them. He doesn't mind being called names. He'll just turn around you and call you a worse name. So this is not really about Mandami in my estimation. This is just Trump doing what he does all the time. A, but B, to the degree that it has anything to do with Mandami at all, right now he is the face of the Democratic Party. And who knows who the heck is ultimately running, and they won't be running against Trump, but he likes to, whoever it is, whether it's a Republican that's in his way or a Democrat, he likes to go after them and specifically kneecap them and bring them to the ground. And right now, this is that person. And there's a lot to be said, a lot for anybody, to not let that person define their own persona. If you have the power, and not everybody does, he does, to bring them in the room with you, to look them in the eye, to see if they can be the same person in front of you as they can be on camera. That's the kind of recon I guarantee you Trump was doing. He wants to know because this is his home state. He loves New York. He's going to want to leverage that over and over and over again. But he wanted to know what he was dealing with. What he found out, I'm not entirely sure. You'll have to ask him. But I think that's what was going on there.
All right. So let me also then consult you as show ombudsman. All right. Because I did get several mentions from whatever people that still have the never-ending, Gator solidarity in their bios. We haven't driven off yet on X. They were all in my feed over the weekend accusing me of being a grifter and falling for something I'm often mocked among the grifter crowd, the idea of 4D chest. I don't think a rope-a-dope is 4D chess. I think it's a very just classic sales technique to kind of flesh out a false objection and set somebody up for failure later. Okay. But what do you think? Have I, at this point, should I just change my name to Candace because I fell for the grift and I'm peddling that now to my very gullible audience that 4D chess does exist.
Let me just remind you, I'm all about the coattails. Absolutely. And my life is going just fine in terms of Steve and how he treats me as his employee, fiscally and otherwise. But I guarantee you, I haven't seen the grifter paycheck yet. It has not hit.
It has not come in yet?
It has not come in yet.
It has not come in yet.
Just the normal paychecks. The grifter one has not come in. You'll have to send your email to Steve on that front, but I have not received the fallout from that yet.
Well, maybe that makes me more desperate. I mean, what's worse than a whore, a slut that just wants it, just wants the attention that badly and puts out at that level, right? So maybe I'm a harlot then. I'm worse than a grifter, Todd. I'm a harlot. I really just want to be picked so bad. I want to be on the inside so bad. I have no associations. We didn't get invited to go to the White House, nothing like that, and so I'm desperate for my seat at the table, and I am just going to put out my own soul like this just because I'm hoping for a breath mint when it's over.
Yeah, that math checks out, sure.
That's very possible. That is very possible. All right. How many clips do you think there's any possibility that there's ramifications next year in the midterms from this meeting? Because I think there are.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I had to guess right now, 11 months out from when we're in the home stretch of the midterm campaign, and midterm campaigns break later than presidential ones do because you're not just focused on singular personalities for months on end, right? Okay. So if I had to guess, there will not be a full-on Morning in America economic boom next year. If I had to guess, things will improve. I mean, things are improved from where they were a year or two ago. But on the affordability micro scale, most of America is not feeling that yet. Hence the numbers we are facing. If I had to guess, that improvement will continue steadily. But maybe not enough that there is a watershed, definitive, wind is at our back. Trump's overall rating is now back in the plus, okay? And we can kind of coast off of that there's going to be enough argument about whether the current process or plan is working, especially given the fact that I do think the Supreme Court is likely to say he does not have the authority unilaterally to impose these tariffs. And then, so how does Plan B, how does Plan C work? How fast can they work, right? Okay. I think that there's going to be enough gray area here. We're going to need to do some Democrat deflection. And that's why I do think for sure there will be ramifications from this meeting next year.
Yeah, and it can work in one of two ways. I mean, first of all, it does have to work. Otherwise, that's a problem. But assuming it does work, if Mondami isn't the total socialist that he bragged about being and ultimately tries to ride coattails himself and basically lets the economic situation for New Yorkers also get better along the lines of Donald Trump. Donald Trump can say, you're just, ultimately, you just want to be me at the end of the day. He can get him that way. Or if it doesn't get better in New York, it's because Mondami is actually the socialist he is, and he's destroying New Yorkers' lives relative to the rest of the country. He can play that card. And he can do it again with a greater degree of familiarity because he can reference the actual conversation they had and that I brought you in. And I wasn't trying to end you at the beginning. I actually brought you in as a fellow American. So it's not a bad idea at all to have him or other very problematic people in just to look him in the eye and measure him up.
What was in this for Mamdani, do you think? And again, I didn't watch the whole thing, but at least based on, I watched numerous clips of this. I thought he clearly looked like the junior partner, but that could also be curated clips from our own side. Okay. So admitting that, what was in this for him, do you think?
Mondami's just like most liberals, progressive, leftists, insane people. They believe their own hype, and they think Donald Trump is literally Hitler, and they all puff out their chest and they go into the room and they think they can beat him. That happens to people on the right too, and they lose all of the time. That's what this wasn't. He thinks he's all that, and quite frankly, the entire city of New York just told him he was all that. It's ridiculous, but it's true. So he thought he was going to walk in there and hold court, and shockingly, that didn't happen.
How does he look politically? Hemming and hawing about calling Trump a fascist to his face. Having Trump say, it's okay to call me that if you want. I've been called worse. And then to have Mamdani show up on Monday morning shows here today, back to calling Trump a fascist behind his back.
That's my point.
Not how does that look to us? How does that look to the normie voter in America, do you think?
Well, if it happens enough, and it's not just a one-off, and that's an attention span thing with the normie voter, that's as much their problem as it Mondani's. But if that can be what you make them wear on a regular basis, that becomes the Costanza thing in their head every time they see him. Again, that speaks to the entire Democratic Party and the normie voter. That's what Donald Trump is trying to figure out. And Republicans should be trying to figure that out as well. Who can they make the average voter wear in terms of the idea they have in their head about Democrats?
Here's the thing. I would greatly prefer next October to not have anything we just talked about have to be relevant whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? Like, if this has to be relevant to the conversation, then it's because we did not deliver on the economy and healthcare costs to the rate that we control our own destiny.
Well, I think if we are having to explain it at length, I think is your point, instead of it having been...
It's self-evident because of the policy result. Right, yes.
Exactly. I totally agree with you, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to have to make these kinds of long-form cases. You don't want to have these sorts of distinctions, all right? Because it means then that you're looking for people to find nuance that goes aside, that helps them put their own personal experiences aside.
That's correct.
And that is not a great place to be in any campaign. It's not an impossible place to be. I mean, especially when you look at who your opponents are, all right? It's not an impossible place to be, but it's not the ideal place to be by any stretch whatsoever. It means that at the very least, you're not on offense. But you have to reshape the discussion to put yourself on offense so that you're not on the defensive. So best case scenario is this doesn't have to be relevant next fall. It doesn't have to be because the policies did their job. But when I see the amount of Republicans talking about retiring early, we may need the Mamdani deflection. I hope not, but we may need it. All right, when we come back, we're going to continue our conversations about the state of play on the right. Jason Whitlock, our friend and colleague from the Blaze here, is going to join us for that. Stay tuned. Live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace with Todd Erzin. Bit of a stripped down show today without the maestro, Aaron McIntyre. He's taken a much deserved personal day. You can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And you guys have been asking me, hey, we want an update. I know that you were talking to First Liberty as your reps, and then some people in the federal government about all your YouTube censorship. Where is that at? I hope I can have an update on that for you either before the end of the year or right after the first of the year. But we are still working on that front. All right. So for now, you can subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you wouldn't mind, leave us a 5-star review if you're a podcast listener. Now, you may think, well, I really don't like your show. We would never ask you to lie. We would never do that. Okay. But we would ask you to exaggerate. We don't think that's bearing false witness at all. So we just want 1- and 5-star reviews. There's really no reason for there to ever be anything in between. And then the more 5 stars we get, it doesn't just satiate our fragile male egos. It does. But it also makes the Blaze very happy. So thank you for each and every one of those. You've given us over tens of thousands of those at the various podcast platforms. So thank you. You guys can also subscribe to our podcast as well, or hit follow on Apple iTunes. And that's how you can rest assured that every time we do a new episode, it's for sure right there in your podcast feed. And this part of the show brought to you by our great friends over at Preborn. You know, 'tis the season for Advent. And when Mary said, "Let it be done to me according to your word," she did not know what her future was going to look like. She only knew that saying yes to life, yes to God's plan, would come with uncertainty, risk, and sacrifice. And through that simple act of courage, she brought forth the Savior of the world. Well, there are countless mothers every day that also are wondering if they have that courage, and they are facing uncertainty, risk, and sacrifice. And the enemy is whispering in their ears, it's not a person. It's not a human. It's just a tissue mass. You can move on. Trying to convince them to really commit an atrocity against their own soul, not just their own child, but their own soul, murder their own offspring. So there are two different messages. One, if you walk into a Planned Parenthood clinic, they're going to feed the darkness. You walk into a preborn clinic, they're going to try to point you to the light. And it starts with an ultrasound. Hopefully, that hearing of the baby's heartbeat convicts the mom. She is a mom. That's another person that does not belong to her. And most of the time it does. And did you know for as little as $28, you can fund an ultrasound today that doubles a baby's chance at life, and I would argue maybe saves mama's soul in the process as well. But here's the thing about preborn. They don't stop there, and that's why we partner with them here at The Blaze. They take it next level. Prenatal care, postnatal care, sometimes for up to 2 years after the baby's birth. Practical stuff like car seats and diapers, intimate stuff like counseling. They're there to support this new family. Now, they do this all free of charge, but I think we all know none of it is free. And that's now where our support comes into play. You guys have been so generous with this partnership the last few years. Let's keep it going. Make a tax-deductible donation to the 5-star charity Preborn today. If you're looking at end-of-year giving options, what better giving option is there than life? Preborn.com/Steve is where you can go. That's dial pound 250, say the keyword baby on your mobile phone as well, or just keep it really simple. Preborn.com/Steve. So after the great unity we had in the aftermath of Charlie's murder, there have been some fissures on our side that have emerged in the weeks since. And I cannot possibly approach my dead friend's jockstrap in terms of reach, resources, relationships. Okay. In fact, none of us can. And that's why I've been saying it's going to take a team of people to basically that have some of the apostolic levels of giftedness that Charlie demonstrated to try and compensate for that. One area where maybe I can help is very few people, particularly in the evangelical sphere, know as many people with a large platform, know as many people as I've been blessed to know. And that's part of that's just living in the first in the nation caucus state of Iowa. And you can't do diddly poo here without organizing evangelicals. And so going back to when I was just a local radio host, that gave me a lot more connections beyond typically what you'd get hosting a show in the 89th largest radio market. And then just, managing away and surviving, somehow doing this for 20 years now, you're just going to run into a lot of people. And so what I'm kind of hoping that I can do, it's weird for me. I'm normally in the insurgent disruptor position. But I really sense for the first time in my career that, a conviction to try and keep our coalition together. I know that is something Charlie felt very strongly about as well. And so we started a series of conversations. We did Oron McIntyre, friend and colleague of mine here at The Blaze. 2 weeks ago, we did another friend of mine on the other side of a lot of this so-called woke, dissident, right, conventional, conservative fault line. Again, these are terms in many cases. I don't know what they mean, but we did that with another friend of mine, Josh Hammer, last week. And we want to keep this series going, kind of come now, let us reason together, to quote from the prophet Isaiah, basically. And let's start by hearing what everybody has to hear as much as we possibly can. And then we treat you guys like adults, that you are smart enough, if you're tuned in, to kind of make up your own mind what you think of these dialogues and debates on our side right now. And we've got another friend and colleague joining us for this conversation this week. It's good to have Jason Whitlock back on the show. And unfortunately, him and I tape about the same time, so we have not been able to do this that much the last few years. But Jason, it is a pleasure, brother, to have you with us, man. How are you?
I'm great, Steve, and thank you for having me.
You bet. You bet. In fact, let me just start there with kind of like a big picture question for you. What do you think the state of the American right is right now? What do you think it is?
like everything else in the world, it's in upheaval and trying to redefine itself and trying to reach young people. Again, Charlie Kirk was the outreach for the American right. Uh, uh, you know, as he was the guy, he was the connector for young people, and we've now lost him through assassination. And so that has increased the upheaval and the infighting for who's going to replace Charlie Kirk. What should our message be? How do we reach out to young people that seem to be getting influenced by Nick Fuentes? So I would describe the American right just as in upheaval. And I think most things around the globe are in upheaval. And to some degree, I think it's not to some degree, I think it's necessary. We've gone through a lot in the last decade, a lot in the last 40, 50 years. And so there does need to be a reckoning and a redefining of what is the American right, what is the right thing for Christians to do politically. I think all this stuff is necessary.
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. It is on my list. I am going to get to it this week, especially with the longer Thanksgiving break. But Tim Pool hosted a debate on Friday on his show with two guys I know very well. In fact, Jason, I might be the only man in America that spoke to both Oron McIntyre and Joel Berry before they did that debate last week. And over the last couple of months, I encouraged them both to do it. I thought it would be very constructive. It's fascinating to me. One of my guilty pleasures is, and I've told them both this, one of my guilty pleasures is every now and then I like to retweet them both back to back. And the reason why is because when they're not talking about Israel, they literally say the exact same things. Literally the exact same things, as far as I can tell. Anyway, all right. And so I'm kind of fascinated by that, and I'll be curious to see how Tim handled that conversation. But as much as I can understand both of these guys, and I know them both personally, and I've had long form conversations with both of them, both about this debate and at times even how they've dealt with each other publicly during this debate. It seems to me, I want to, and see if you're okay with this. I just want to throw, to me, atheists don't get to referee biblical worldview fights. They just don't. They just don't. They're out automatically. So James Lindsay is self-appointed sheriff of Nottingham. I just reject that whole cloth. No way. No how. Not happening. To me, Lindsay's a psyop. I have no idea where he came from. I have no idea how an Obama voter suddenly got to be preside over mass ethical distinctions and debates. So I just reject that whole cloth. All right. Are you okay with that, or you want to push back on that at all?
No, an atheist has nothing to say that I'm interested in hearing.
All right. So with that said, since we agree on that, then, to me, I think the debate between Oron and Joel, as best as I can understand it, and I say this as someone that knows them both pretty well, is the debate is, do we have a limiting principle? Okay. And I think that Oron is correct that politics is fundamentally, because most of politics, Jason, has been conducted throughout human history outside of a biblical worldview, okay? And so politics fundamentally, therefore, does become what Oron says that it is. Reward your friends and punish your enemies. It does seem, as Christians, for us to succeed in this arena, we have to be willing to do that to some level. That's the ecosystem of the arena. If you don't want to do that, you're not a terrible Christian. It just means it's not the arena for you, right? Like similarly, if I don't want to shoot people, it doesn't mean you're not a good Christian. It just means you should not join the military. You have other places where God wants to place you. Oron, I think, is correct that is the ecosystem of politics. And if we don't understand that, all right, then we cannot be successful in this arena. Where I agree with Joel, though, is as Christians, we must have limiting principles. When God introduces his word, it's to Moses at Mount Sinai, the first time he ever wrote something with his own hand. And he gave him 10 statements, and all 10 are things you can't do. Limiting principles. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Limiting principles all the way through. there are things we cannot do as Christians, even if it seems like it will cost us worldly wins. Even if it seems like the earthly cost of doing them is so great that we look like we're on the wrong side of history if we will not go there. Joel is fundamentally correct that I believe anyway, that is true. The Word of God is full of limiting principles. And I think what we're debating right now on the right, particularly in the Christian side of things, and I would put Oran and Joel both in that camp. What we're debating is what is the limiting principle and where we get it from? What's your thought on that?
Wow. I'm not as familiar with Joel and Aaron's disagreements. I saw a clip or two, I think, from their debate. The best answer I can give for me, because I don't want to speculate about what these guys think. I think for me, what I feel like I'm watching and perhaps in some way participating in is that Trump came into office in 2017 and gave an inauguration speech that talked about placing America first, and that America first was always a part of the MAGA movement, that those brands were together, joined at the hip. And that once he introduced that idea in 2017, and look, it's been, if you go all the way back to Woodrow Wilson in it's not the first time we've had an America First movement, and we're just rehaving it again. Once that gets introduced, now it becomes down to how far do we want to take it? Mm-hmm. And Tucker Carlson and other people, Matt Walsh to some degree, to a lesser degree, Oren, myself, is like, no, man, I want America first, second, third, fourth, fifth. I don't travel abroad. I used to be interested in that and did some of that. Now I have no interest. And so I go back to Trump's 2017 speech where he talked about the manufacturing, how all the manufacturing jobs have fled America, and he wanted to bring it back. All of that resonated with me, and his speech or his insinuation that globalism is a bad thing. This is all. I agree with all of that. My parents were factory workers initially. All of my family, my friends, their parents were factory workers, and I feel like all of these global citizens, I just am suspicious of. And so I am hardcore America first. I don't want to be involved in any more foreign wars. And that whole hardcore America first thing has run headfirst into Israel, which many people in America believe is America's greatest ally. And the hardcore America First crowd is like, I don't care. We have to prioritize America, and that's caused a great deal of conflict. And so, Steve, I'm gonna ask you, because again, everybody knows I kind of like politics or interested in politics, but I'm not hardcore. Can you elaborate and clarify your question and connect it to my America First argument? How does the limiting principles affect this America First argument that I'm unpacking?
I think, what are we not allowed to do as believers, I think, is the debate. Okay. What is it that, so I tell my audience all the time, Jason, I detest Mike Pence. I've detested Mike Pence for like 10 years. He was a terrible governor of Indiana, and I called him out at the time. One of the worst screw jobs we've ever received is what he did to the religious freedom issue there when they threatened to take the Final Four away. And then he completely caved, and he altered that bill so that he then made it easier for the homos, for the rainbow jihad to come after us than it was before. All right, so he's been a feckless character. I was disgusted when Trump made him his nominee for VP. To me, Mike Pence is in his perpetually furrowed brow, as I like to say, is the symbol of the last generation of American evangelical failure on multiple fronts. And one of the reasons why I lobbied my good friend Bob Vanderplat so heavily to make Tucker the moderator for his leadership summit event, which was the first public event Tucker did after Fox got rid of him. And I was the only person in Bob's inner circle, by the way, that lobbied for that. Okay. So I'd make the argument without my input, Tucker probably doesn't get that gig, but I wanted Tucker to do it because I knew he was going to do exactly to Mike Pence, exactly what he did. Okay. So because ultimately when it comes to putting other countries first, for Mike Pence, there's no limiting principle. There's always a place where another country comes before our own, and we're all automatically racist, misogynist, xenophobic, anti-Semitic bigots if we don't agree with that. All right. I think where the debate is happening now is going in the other direction. Okay. Which is, what are the limiting principles then? I think almost everybody agrees we cannot go back to the Pencean convent of perpetual furrowed brows. We all agree on that. Okay. I think the question comes, how far in the other direction can we go? Right. And so I always tell my audience, we're going to do everything it takes to win, except that which the Word of God says we cannot. Everything else, I'm going to do. And I always tell my audience also, we're not even close to the boundary of not being able to. We serve a God who said, go into Canaan and hit the Control-Alt-Delete button. We're not even close to the envelope of what God says we can and cannot do to win. We're not even close. But after getting worked over for a generation by the Pence and Bush crowd, we seem to think anything that offends our enemies means we're way too far and should apologize now before it's too late, right? But the other question, I think, comes then, how far in the other insurgent direction can we go? And what's the guiding light to say that is stuff we cannot do?
Well,
I mean, I would imagine you wrestle with this, right? As a believer doing your show every day, right? I mean, how far can I go? What am I allowed to do? I mean, if this is the last show I do before I face my Lord, okay, can I look him in the eye? That kind of a thing, right?
Yeah. And but for me, it's like that comes down to, this is why I don't curse on my show. Mm-hmm. This is why, I try to not, I talk about sexuality and sex issues in a way that's consistent with the Bible, and talk about the mistakes that I've made. And so, I don't want to promote anything that's antithetical to the Bible. Again, I'll go back to, as it relates to this conversation, as I'm hearing you unpack it, my thoughts go to, can people be critical of Israel mm-hmm. without offending our biblical worldview? And I think as I look at the Bible, I don't think we're anywhere near that line. And you got to remember, you're talking to someone that's, placed into the Black tribe. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we're anywhere close to talking about the American Black tribe in a negative way that is offensive to God, because we have this thing that we've erected called Black culture, and much of it, if not all of it, seems to be antithetical to a biblical worldview, and I think it needs to be criticized and called out constantly. And we're nowhere near offending me by pointing this out, and so I apply that same standard to anybody that seems to say anything that is critical of Israel is immediately called an anti-Semite. And I'm like, wow, that seems the same. If you say, hey, man, Black culture is promoting degeneracy and radical materialism, and you don't like rappers, and you don't want Snoop Dogg being the face of America, well, now you're a racist. And I'm like, no, you're not a racist. You're just someone that thinks Snoop Dogg promotes values and a culture that's antithetical to Jesus Christ. And there are people, and again, I'm not tapping out. I'm just acknowledging I don't know foreign affairs. I don't know Mideast history well enough to fully understand what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in the Mideast. But I just believe that men have to be allowed to have rough conversations and say
Agreed.
Things without being called racist or anti-Semitic. And so anytime I hear people go to that, immediately I'm just like, well, they're not interested in the conversation, because I can take you to the Bible, and Jesus and the disciples said much worse things than anything I'm even approaching. And so that's where I think for me, Israel has been set up as a salvation issue, and I don't think it's a salvation issue. And I don't think it's a salvation issue because, like, ministers that I trust have take the same position that, like, hey, this isn't a salvation issue. I don't understand why it's this important. And I'm kind of the same way. It's a country with politics no different than America. I can say anything I want about American politicians. I've watched people say anything and everything about Donald Trump. But if you say something about Benjamin Netanyahu, now you're anti-Semitic. I reject all of that. And people can say whatever they want about me. I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, you must be racist for saying that. And this will sound crazy in America, but I'm not even sure if I would care if I thought it was racist. The only thing I'm going to examine is the truth of what you're saying. If you're saying Jason Whitlock is a fat slob, I'm not going to say you're racist. I'm going to say, hey, you're accurate. If you say Jason Whitlock is a liar, I'm going to say, now you're inaccurate, really inaccurate. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to jump, because, again, the Bible teaches me I can't judge motives. And because I don't know. Only God knows the heart. I don't. And so I tend to stay away from, well, you must be racist if you said this, and you must be homophobic if you said this. I reject all of that. And so, having been called anti-Semitic, having been called someone who hates Black people, it's just all the name calling to shut down conversation. I think, from my understanding, Aaron, Tim Pool, Jason Whitlock, Tucker Carlson, we're not interested in any of that. Let's have the discussion. Let's not call names.
One thing, you just said you're not an expert on foreign affairs. One thing, though, you may have more knowledge of than maybe anybody in our entire company is the inner workings of corporate media newsrooms, because you have operated in that world at a very high level. You've won numerous awards that go along with operating in that world at a high level. And so you've got a lot of experience in how narratives get planted, stories get seeded, how preferences get reinforced, right? How Overton windows get constructed. So I've got about 5 minutes here. I'm going to yield you before the first break. I'm going to yield you the balance of that time, if you want it, to get your reaction to what we found out over the weekend when Elon Musk put the country of origin feature on these accounts. And how many people claiming, like the Republicans against Trump, foreign account, right? Israel exposed, foreign account, all right? I mean, across the spectrum, and you see the same countries over and over again: Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bangladesh, India, same kind of countries over and over and over again. One guy, a Canadian, claiming that he waited in line for 4 hours to vote for Kamala last November in Georgia. No, he didn't. So, I mean, to see this, this was everywhere over the weekend. The balance of my time here, the rest of this hour, is yours. I want to get your reaction to that.
Not remotely surprised. I think that this is enlightening, but it's not to the full depth of just how much Twitter in particular, X, but most social media apps, they're a funhouse mirror that you can buy a narrative, you can influence people through. It's one of the most inauthentic places on earth. I started talking about this in detail in 2016 when the whole Colin Kaepernick phenomenon went on. I was like, this isn't reflective of reality. And social media under Jack Dorsey, and to a different degree, and still to this day, can be manipulated by foreigners, by Americans, from George Soros, and I'm not sure George probably an American, but anybody, right or left, can buy whatever narrative they want supported over these social media apps. And yes, do they use foreigners to do some of this? Absolutely. But I was out in 2016, I was out in LA and was looking at signs posted on streets of that they were offering up careers in social activism. These were like posters pull off the phone number and apply for a job, and we'll put you to work in the social media world. And your job would be to tweet out things that help set a narrative. And so I just kept looking at this, and I was like, the whole world is talking about police killing black men. And all the data says, well, man, that happens like 300 times a year, 400 times a year to a black man where the police will kill one. And it happens about 800 times a year to a white person is killed by police. And I'm like, this is such a tiny number. And then when it comes down to controversial cases where the police may kill someone in excessive use of force, we're really talking about 5 to 10 times a year where we could even have a debate. But the whole social media apparatus over Twitter, LeBron James most publicly, is pretending like black people can't go outside without being killed by police. And I'm like, wow, look what they've done to social media. And so now the mainstream newspapers, every lie that they want to confirm, they can get them confirmed over social media. And that's why newspapers, the New York Times, the Washington Post, they were constantly quoting what happened on Twitter. And this drew a lot of comments on Twitter. And it was like a confirmation of like, we've come up with this false narrative.
Yep.
I'm sorry, you want me to stop?
I said a feedback loop. You described a feedback loop. I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. And that confirms some false narrative. And so they're doing it with foreigners. They're doing it with algorithms. They're doing it by paying for certain narratives. And like, if you have a lot of money, Stephen A. Smith, or in the sports media world, or any of these celebrities from Jay-Z to Beyonce, Taylor Swift, they have enough money through their agencies and the money they generate to pay for whatever narrative they want. And if that applies to the entertainment world, it certainly applies to the political world. And so I think this is long overdue, but I think we're only scratching the surface of just how fraudulent the conversation is over social media and how it's been used to take us into chaos. Again, we're
20 seconds. Go ahead.
People are pretending that the real crisis isn't unfathered black children in America causing chaos, and it's spreading to white America. And social media is where truth goes to die.
We'll come back more with Jason Whitlock in a moment. On the Steve Deace Show, it's the one time of year that Birch Gold gives away free gold with a qualifying purchase. That's right, for Black Friday. When you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold, Birch Gold's going to send you a free gold to your home for every $20,000 purchase. So gold, started the year around $2,600. By October, it was over $4,000. Talked to a little birdie of mine a few weeks ago and said, hey, what happens if SCOTUS says Trump can't use all this tariff power? What's plan B? And this pretty smart little birdie said plan B is probably going to be inflate the price of gold all the more so you can then sell it off to pay down the debt and try to help inflation that way. So that could mean maybe even a bigger jump in gold next year. All right. So because gold thrives in times of uncertainty. And if you're looking to diversify your savings, Birch Gold, they can help you. Plus, now through November 30th, get free gold with a qualifying purchase. Just text my name, Steve, to 989898 to claim your eligibility and for a free info kit on gold. But your opportunity for free gold with purchase ends Thanksgiving weekend, November the 30th. So don't wait. Text Steve to the number 989898 for full details. Back here again with our friend and colleague, Jason Whitlock, as we continue this series we started the last few weeks, just kind of on overall on the state of the right. Jay, I'm curious, what do you think of my associate Todd Erzin's demand that all anonymity on X be removed? What do you think about that?
1,000% agree.
You do agree?
Yeah, fought it forever. That everybody should be attached to an email. We should have first and last names. And yes, yes. John Hancock, man. Everybody needs to put their John Hancock down, stand 10 toes down as a man or woman and say who you are. But if you did that, then, instead of having 1 billion users on Twitter, you may have 500 million. I don't know what the numbers are, but they love all the users, and they could sell that and use it with the advertisers. We reach this many people or whatever. But yes, I wish that, particularly here in America, that everybody had to sign up, sign their name, attach a real email address, and identify who they are. Everything that I tweet out, I have to stand on because it's my name, Jason Whitlock, out there. And there's 70% of people, 80% maybe, that are doing it anonymously. And it gives them a level of courage and stupidity that's inappropriate.
Let's discuss the Israel thing again one more time, because I'm fascinated by this, and see if you and I can maybe put our heads together and figure this out. I have been, from day one, an adamant critic of U.S. involvement in the Ukraine war, for a few simple reasons. One, I don't think there's any good guys. I hate that what's happening to the Ukrainian people. They didn't ask to get blamed, but their government is a corrupt puppet state of George Soros and the World Economic Forum, frankly. Doesn't mean I love Putin. I had Russia today come to me and offer and ask me if I wanted access. I just never returned any of those inquiries. All right. I'm an adult, and I understand that sometimes it's just bad on bad. Not everything is 1984. Okay. So there's part of Ukraine that voted to be a part of Russia and would like to be. And the reality is, much I can't stand Putin, he didn't try to drug me with a poisonous jab against my will. My own government did, and all the guys in Davos and Brussels wanted to do that. So, and then when I see the president post over the weekend, I don't know why they want us to keep involved in this war. Russia, there are all these European countries demanding we keep funding Ukraine, keep still buying oil from Russia. What is the point of any of this? And I'm like, just walk away. No one comes to me and says, well, you just hate European ethno-nationalism, Steve. Okay. You just, no one says that. No one says that. Right. So I agree with you that there is a double standard of, you're like, I don't want to defend Israel. I don't want to give them foreign aid. They can have any war with Iran they want to have, not my fight. I agree. Then why are you instantly called an anti-Semitism? Or anti-Semite. What I do find fascinating, though, is the Trump administration this year gave 115% more money to Ukraine than they did Israel. And there was no, Israel exposed, America first accounts following every last dollar of money we sent to Ukraine. The amount of Jew hate in my feed is so bad that even the guy who's the original anti-Zionist conspiracy guy, Alex Jones, is like, Elon Musk needs to do something about too much Jew hate in my feed. He was even complaining about it, right? So somewhere in there is some kind of boundary where people are clearly using legitimate policy griefs as fig leaves to cover up the brazen nakedness of maybe what their true motivations are. But at the same time, we can't let that stop us from having true and real debates either, right? So there's a lot of disagreement on our side about how to navigate this space. What's your take on that?
Well, I'm someone that says take everything you see over Twitter with an incredible large dose of salt or just skepticism. There's almost none of it. And again, everything can be manipulated. Again, we went a decade with Twitter telling us, and people on Twitter backing it up, that the police are just out randomly killing black men. It was never true. And so when I hear like, oh, there's this inordinate amount of Jew hate over Twitter, perhaps it's true, but I also saw all of this ginned up, the police are just killing everybody randomly. I don't know what to believe. So I take very little of it at face value. I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with, is that Donald Trump and his whole fake news and the Trump phenomenon that's been going on since 2015 to now we're in 2025. There's been a decade of Trump defining American discourse. And his fake news deal gave everybody permission to question everything. And that's what people are doing. It started with 9/11. And then you was like, well, if they lied to us about 9/11, and then they lied to us about COVID, and then you start going, well, they lied to us about JFK. And then you just start going further and further and further back. And that's why people then start saying, like, hey, man, did they tell us the truth about World War II? And you can blame Daryl Cooper or Tucker Carlson for having that conversation. But I go back to, hey, man, it's all these lies. If they released the JFK files in some sort of timely fashion, there's less skepticism and there's more trust of the government. Mm-hmm. If 9/11, for me, I've never understood Building 7 falling, never. And maybe I just haven't gone far enough down the rabbit hole. And then if you bring the COVID thing into it, it's blame those people. And those are world leaders that we elected and that are around the globe that have lied to us about things that have forced us to question absolutely everything. And they've developed a level of cynicism among the electorate, citizens, the common everyday American, that I blame them, not the people that are skeptical and questioning everything. We've been given no choice but to question everything because we've been flooded with lies. And you got people running around thinking Donald Trump's one of the greatest criminals in the history of America, flooded with lies. You flood this many lies, people are going to become very cynical, and they're going to question things that allegedly should not be questioned. I don't blame the questioners. I blame the keepers of society that created this environment and this culture to where American people feel like, I can't trust anything.
I think that's fair. And I think I say to our audience all the time, I don't have a problem with question everything. My thing is the debate really comes down to where do we go for answers? And that kind of brings us full circle to the whole limiting principle thing. I'm a biblical worldview guy. It's been my number one thing since I got into this business 20 years ago. I know that's near and dear to your heart as well, you know? And so what is ultimately the source for answers, right? Because question everything, if it's just meant to deconstruct our belief systems but not lead us to any form of truth, well, now we get into, satanic Gnosticism and all kinds of things. I love what J.D. Vance said a couple of months ago. Despair is a sin, right? Okay. Skepticism to me as a Christian is warranted. Cynicism is not. Like I think if I begin my worldview with the fact that God supernaturally intervened into human history to raise his dead son back to life, cynicism, we joke about being Vanta Black on our show, but we're really not. It's a little bit like the old H.L. Mencken line, behind every great cynic is a romantic who's just been disappointed one too many times. Okay. And so it's not, to me, I'm not threatened by questions. People can ask me anything they want. The real question to me comes down to what is the source of the seeking of answers? Where do we go for answers, right? Like why then is how does Daryl Cooper any more qualified then? What are his qualifications to answer these questions from any of the actual previous people? Why can't we question Daryl Cooper's credentials then? I just want all this stuff to work both ways, right? We already got a movement on the other side where every time I turn into Tolerance Boulevard, it's a one-way street. I am totally fine with question everything as long as we really mean we get to question everything.
Obviously, the source for all of our answers are in the Word of God and in the Bible. And so, that's where we should go for answers. I think that, and again, I'm referencing people I don't know well. And, I don't know Daryl Cooper at all. I've seen him on Tucker's show. I follow him on Twitter. But I don't think Daryl Cooper minds being questioned. I don't. I mean, it's like, to me, I know I don't mind being questioned, and I take a lot of provocative positions and statements. But because Daryl Cooper is questioning something, I just don't, again, I'll go back to what I said originally. I just can't go to the name calling that he's a racist, that he's anti-Semitic, that he's this or he's that. he's a person that has a lot of work. And again, I've listened to a nice chunk of his work on Jim Jones and the Guyana tragedy. And he's done a bunch of work that has nothing to do with World War II. And it's amazing work. And so, and it's goes to great lengths to be fair to any and everybody. And I'm not talking about his World War II work. I'm talking about this incredible catalog of work that he's got. And he seems to understand that, like, hey, there really are two sides to every story. And we'll let the two sides play out. And then you get to make a decision on, who's more credible. That's what Daryl Cooper's work seems to be to me. And I respect him for that. And as just, having been a journalist, having done a lot of work that pissed people off, like, I look back and it's like, Steve, you're old enough to remember the Gen 6. Yep. And the Gen 6, this is one of these precursors to the whole Black Lives Matter movement. I went and blew that whole story up. Rush Limbaugh read my entire story on his show and just blew it up. Like, there was some white liberal minister from Texas named Alan Bean who concocted the entire narrative about, 6 black kids. They jumped and beat up this white kid because in October there was a noose hung, and they jumped and beat him up in March because the school didn't do anything about the noose being hung. I just blew it to smithereens. And this was the original George Floyd type deal. And I was hated for it and called every name in the book and how dare you, and why would you even go in? I interviewed the district attorney down there in Genoa, Louisiana. No one else could get the guy to do an interview, and it was like, literally, it was a different way of saying, how could you platform the district attorney who brought these charges against these innocent black boys? And it's why I'm just hypersensitive to people being canceled, because I've been canceled for doing journalism, and the entire sports media apparatus, from ESPN to the National Association of Black Journalists to the ADL, they just all came against me to frame me as a lunatic and one of the worst people on the planet. And I'm like, man, I know.
You're like, I'm at least just the second worst. I know I'm not the worst. I know I'm not the worst, right?
Yeah. And so I'm like, if they did it to me, they'll do it to anybody. And so I'm hypersensitive, and I'm just like, hey man, let's just let people say what they think, and beat them with a better version or with the actual truth, a better set of ideas, rather than canceling them. I've lived long enough to see Phil Donahue on national TV interview David Duke, interview Louis Farrakhan, and all this other stuff. And America was fine. No one thought, oh, they platformed David Duke, I'm no longer safe in America. It's not true. They platformed Louis Farrakhan, I'm no longer safe in America. Not true. People get to have their say, and people with better ideas, and those people with better ideas have a biblical worldview, in my opinion, that the truth wins out. God's word wins out. The truth will, it takes that light of truth to force out darkness. And we, now we're afraid. We want to play God rather than let God's truth play God.
Amen. Well, I think this has been fantastic, brother, but especially these last 5 minutes, I think it was very important for a lot of people in our audience to hear you say that and express that, so they can get a different, maybe broader context of some of the comments they may see from you that might put their teeth on edge at times. And that's exactly why we're doing this. I think it is important for us to understand where one another is coming from here. So thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate it, man. God bless.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet. All right, Todd, we got about a minute and a half here. Your thoughts before we get out. What do you think?
That was fantastic from Jason. Basically, what you heard was Black Socrates right there. We're going to sit down. We're going to reason together. But that doesn't mean there's, when he talks about platforming difficult people, yeah, but he also said there's rules to the platform. before when he is against anonymity, he said anonymity is making people way too brave about stupid stuff. I want the real you in front of me so I can debate you. And then the truth has the best chance to get to the top. That's classic Socratic dialogue, and it shouldn't be threatening to anybody. But the nature of the platform, the rules of the platform are definitely germane to that conversation. And right now we let a lot of cancer in when we don't have to.
I hope now we're 3 weeks into this. I sincerely hope, if nothing else, by treating you all as adults, you are seeing we are way better off having these conversations in person amongst one another than back and forth on X or via soundbite or sound clip. Way more productive doing it this way. So thanks again to everybody down in Dallas for filling in for Aaron so we could have a personal day today and making that happen. We know we inconvenienced you guys coming out of the weekend, so thank you guys very much for that as well. Todd, thank you too. And thanks to all of you. We're back at it again tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, go hard. Romans 8:28.
This is Steve Deace.